Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really jarring paradox of modern life. I mean, think about it. We are literally the most interconnected human beings to ever exist in the history of our species. We're all walking around with these glowing screens in our pockets, right? Screens that house thousands of followers, a never-ending stream of unread messages, social media likes. But despite this overwhelming abundance of communication, we're fundamentally disconnected. You can broadcast your entire life to thousands of people in an instant, but somehow you still end the days staring at the ceiling, feeling totally unseen. So what's going on here? We're going to break down exactly why this is happening. Just to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this, let's talk about a specific number: 60%. Over 60% of adults report regularly feeling isolated. Let that sink in for a second. More than half of the population feels this deep, lingering sense of loneliness, even when they're completely surrounded by people in a crowded city or totally swamped with digital notifications on their phones. It's wild. This is an unprecedented epidemic, and it stretches across absolutely all demographics and age groups. So we really have to ask the obvious question here. Why on earth are we so connected, yet so alone? You can literally text someone on another continent in milliseconds, but you probably don't even know the name of the neighbor living 20 feet from your front door. And this reality forces us to completely reframe the conversation. We've got to stop treating loneliness like it's some sort of personal failure or a modern emotional defect. Instead, we need to start viewing it as a biological warning light. Think of it like a check engine light flashing on the dashboard of our minds.
Which brings us to part one of our explainer, the tribal brain. To actually solve this mystery, we've got to establish our evolutionary baseline. We need to understand how our brains were actually built to function out in the wild, way before smartphones and fiber optic cables were even a thing. And there's this fascinating concept called Dunbar's number that is absolutely key here. Anthropologist Dr. Robin Dunbar did some incredible research into human cognitive architecture, and he proved that our brains simply aren't wired for infinite connections. In fact, we max out at around 150 real, stable social relationships. That is our hardwired cognitive limit. Your brain simply doesn't have the processing power to deeply care about or track the emotional states of 1,000 online acquaintances. It's just not built for it. It's looking for its specific mathematical tribe.
Now, why does this magic number of 150 even matter? Well, think about it like this. Early humans didn't survive because they had sharp claws, or thick armor, or super speed. No way. They survived strictly through cooperative trust and interdependence. If you got isolated from your nomadic tribe back then, that was basically a guaranteed death sentence by starvation or predators. Fast forward to today, and you can easily survive by ordering food from an app in your pajamas without ever speaking to another human face to face. But here's the kicker. Your primal brain doesn't know you live in the modern world. It is still operating on the survival rules of the ancient one.
And this perfectly explains why loneliness hurts so profoundly. When you feel excluded, rejected, or just totally alone, a very specific neural pathway in your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, lights up. And get this, it activates in the exact same way it does when you process physical pain, like a broken bone or a severe burn. Loneliness was never designed to be just a mild inconvenience. Evolution engineered it to feel absolutely terrible, so that you would immediately run back to the safety of the group. Your brain is literally inducing pain to keep you alive.
Let's move on to section 2, the death of third places. So, if our brains are biologically hardwired to need a tribe just to avoid literal pain, we have to look at the sociological breakdown of where that connection used to happen. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg coined this really foundational concept called third places. Think of your home as your first place, and your workplace or school as your second place. Third places are the essential physical environments completely distinct from those two. We're talking public squares, local barbershops, community halls, cafes. These were the crucial physical infrastructures where spontaneous, low-stakes human connection just naturally happened. You didn't need a calendar invite, you just showed up and you belonged.
But of course, this decline didn't just happen overnight. Back in the 19th century, our daily lives were totally built around town squares and bustling coffeehouses. But as we rolled into the 20th century, urban design took a massive turn. We started prioritizing suburban sprawl, car-centric highways, and these privatized commercial zones. And by the time we hit the 24th century, those essential gathering spaces had largely vanished. They got replaced by solitary smartphone scrolling inside our isolated homes. Basically, the physical infrastructure for community was quietly dismantled right under our noses.
Now, you know the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum.
Well, tech platforms happily stepped right into this void with what we can call a digital trick. They basically replace those physical third places with parasocial interactions. So when you're watching your favorite influencer or scrolling through endless group chats, your brain gets this fake temporary hit of social exposure. It kind of feels like you're socializing. But because it completely lacks eye contact, shared physical space, and all those crucial micro-body language signals, your primal nervous system knows something is majorly off. It leaves our evolutionary loneliness alarm ringing silently in the background, entirely unsoothed.
Which leads us to our third section, the physical cost of isolation. All this missing infrastructure and our reliance on digital tricks, it isn't just making us sad or nostalgic. It is actively destroying our physical health. There's a brilliant quote from Dr. John Cacioppo, a pioneering neuroscientist from the University of Chicago, that perfectly summarizes the stakes here. He pointed out that social isolation shares neural mechanisms with physical pain and causes systemic inflammation. His landmark research actually proves that chronic loneliness triggers a specific genetic response in our bodies. It cranks up systemic cellular inflammation and significantly weakens our antiviral defenses. Essentially, your body assumes that because you're alone, you must be in a high-stress, hostile environment, and it literally prepares to take physical damage.
And the epidemiological studies land a massive punch here too. The data is just staggering. Prolonged social isolation carries a health and mortality risk that is basically equivalent to dealing with severe obesity or, get this, smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. We treat smoking and poor diet as these massive public health crises, right? But for some reason, we largely ignore the lethal impact of living in a state of chronic quiet isolation.
And what makes this so incredibly difficult to escape is this psychological trap known as the hypervigilance loop. See, when your brain is left isolated for too long, it enters this defensive threat mode. Because you don't have a tribe to protect you, the brain just assumes everyone around you is a potential predator. As a result, you start misinterpreting entirely neutral social cues, like, say, a missed text, a quiet coworker, or a canceled plan, as hostile or highly critical. This paranoia then causes you to pull even further away from people, trapping you in this vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of isolation. It's really tough to break. But there is hope. Let's look at Section 4, Rebuilding Your Tribal Radius.
Like I said, this isn't where the story ends. Fortunately, because we now understand the mechanics of this biological glitch, we can de-weaponize it. We can actually intentionally shift our behavior back to our evolutionary roots. You can take actionable steps today by shifting your mindset from scaling up to scaling deep. First off, prioritize the quality of your connections over the sheer quantity of your network. Second, make a real effort to reclaim or actively seek out physical third places in your local community. Become a regular at a local spot where people actually know your face. Third, prioritize tiny micro-interactions. Simply waving to a neighbor or chatting with a barista signals to your nervous system that you are safely embedded in a community. And finally, you just have to embrace the vulnerability required to build real ties. Log off, step outside, and risk a little awkwardness to find your people. I want you to remember this powerful thought as you leave this explainer today. You don't need a global crowd to feel whole. Your primal biology is just looking for its 150. Your brain honestly does not care about 1 million followers, and it is entirely unimpressed by an endless feed of content. It is simply asking for a few real people who actually notice when you aren't there. So as we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. If your primal biology is ultimately just looking for its 150, who are the essential members of your modern tribe? And when was the last time you actually looked them in the eye?